Sagittarius warning. Two people are quietly dimming your fire and why you must see it now. Dear Sagittarius, this is not a warning meant to scare you. It is a mirror, reflecting back the truth you may have been too kind, too trusting, or too busy to notice. There are two energies quietly orbiting your life right now. Not with malice, not with loud sabotage, but with gentle, almost comforting gestures that make you slow your wings without even realizing it. They never wound you outright. Instead, they leave you walking away from conversations with just a little less confidence than before. No obvious cuts, no dramatic betrayals. Only a subtle dimming, like a fine dust of doubt settling over the brilliance you once carried so easily. Picture yourself as a fire burning bright in the stillness of night. In the beginning, your flame is wild and generous, offering warmth to the space around you, a beacon to those in the dark. But slowly, without you noticing, voices you trust begin to say, maybe keep it small, just to be safe. And because you care, because you're reasonable, you listen. You feed the fire a little less, contain its reach, tell yourself it's wisdom when in truth it's surrender. The danger here isn't that your fire goes out. It's that one day, you might forget you were ever meant to blaze. And that's why I'm here. I'm Sophia, your guide at Zodiac Wisdom, where we explore astrology not as fortune-telling, but as a map for the soul. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 4 gates of awareness that will help you see clearly who is quietly dimming your fire, and why you must reclaim it now, before your light becomes just a memory. Stay with me to the end, and if this message stirs something in your heart, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Not just for you, but because somewhere, someone else may be waiting for the spark that only you can give. Gate 1: the doubt hidden in care. Not every danger comes with noise. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in warmth, with a smile you've known for years, with words that sound protective rather than restrictive. For Sagittarius, whose heart is naturally open and trusting, this kind of influence can slip past your guard without ever raising an alarm. You are a sign ruled by Jupiter, built to expand, to explore, to reach beyond the horizon. Yet even the freest spirit can be slowed when doubt is disguised as love. These people, whether they are close friends, family members, colleagues, or even a partner, do not tell you don't do it. That would be too easy to spot, too obvious to resist. Instead, they ask questions that sound like concern. Are you sure this is safe? Do you really think you're ready for that? What if it doesn't work out? The words are soft, but their effect is sharp. They plant seeds of hesitation that, over time, take root. And because you value the people in your circle, because you don't want to dismiss genuine care, you let those seeds grow. Imagine this. You are tending to a campfire under the stars. The wood crackles, the flames dance high, the night air glows with possibility. Then someone you trust leans in and says, "Careful, big flames can be dangerous." They're not wrong, you think. So you add less wood next time. And the time after that. Eventually, you are sitting beside a small, contained glow, still warm enough to survive the night, but nowhere near the blazing fire it once was. The question you forget to ask yourself is, was the fire ever truly dangerous, or did they just feel safer when it was smaller? For Sagittarius, this dynamic is especially insidious because your natural optimism leads you to interpret these moments as harmless. You tell yourself they're only trying to help, or maybe they're just being realistic. But realism, when given by someone who does not share your vision, is often just a reflection of their own fears. They do not know what it is to live with Jupiter in your blood, the constant pull toward what's bigger, wider, more alive. Let's ground this in a real example. I once spoke to a Sagittarius woman named Elena. She had been working a stable job for years, but felt a deep call to start her own travel-based coaching business. Every time she mentioned it to her 2 closest friends, they'd smile politely and say things like, "That's exciting, but the economy is really unstable right now," or, "Maybe wait until you have more savings just in case." Over time, those comments chipped away at her momentum. She began to question her timing, her skill, even her worthiness. She didn't stop because she lost interest. She stopped because she absorbed their doubt as her own. What's most dangerous about this is how easily it can hide under the label of love. You might tell yourself, they only want me to be safe. But safety, when defined by someone else's limits, can become a cage you willingly lock yourself inside. For Sagittarius, whose soul came here to expand beyond the familiar, this is the slowest and quietest way to lose yourself, by staying still in the name of care. The astrology here is telling. When Saturn or Pluto makes challenging aspects to your natal chart, especially to your Sun, Moon, or Jupiter, it can manifest as external pressures that test your resilience. Saturn can feel like the voice of responsibility, whispering that caution is wiser than courage. Pluto can expose hidden power dynamics, revealing where others benefit from you staying small. These energies are not here to punish you. They are here to help you see the difference between guidance that protects and guidance that restrains. And here's the truth you need to hear. Genuine care fuels your fire, it doesn't dampen it. It reminds you of your strength, it celebrates your vision. It helps you prepare without telling you to shrink. Anything else, no matter how softly spoken, isn't really care. It's fear, and it's not yours to carry. You may already know exactly who these two people are in your life. Or maybe their identities are still hazy. Either way, awareness is your first act of reclaiming power. Start noticing how you feel after interactions. Do you leave feeling inspired, clearer, and more alive? Or do you leave second-guessing yourself with less certainty than before? Keep track. Patterns will emerge. And when they do, you'll have a choice. To keep letting their fear filter your light, or to thank them for their perspective and continue blazing anyway. Sagittarius, your fire is not here to be managed into a safe size. It's here to grow, to leap, to ignite what's possible. And those who truly care for you will not fear the size of your flame. They will stand beside it, warmed and inspired, trusting that you know how to tend it. Gate 2, the subtle erosion of passion. Not all losses come with dramatic endings. Sometimes what you lose is stolen one grain at a time, so slowly that by the time you realize it's gone, you can't remember when it slipped away. For Sagittarius, passion is oxygen. It's the wind that lifts your arrows, the fire in your chest that turns ideas into adventures. But passion is also fragile when it's constantly brushed by the quiet winds of doubt. These two people in your life aren't extinguishing your fire outright. They're just brushing their hands across the flame now and then, muttering about safety, about realism, about not wanting to see you get hurt. The touches are so light you barely notice them. And yet, over weeks, months, even years, something in you starts to change. You stop charging toward the vision you once felt in your bones. You start waiting for the right moment. You tinker with ideas instead of acting on them. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Sagittarius who once lived with fierce, unapologetic momentum becomes someone who moves only when it feels certain. It reminds me of a Sagittarius man named Adrian. Since childhood, he dreamed of opening his own eco-travel company. He was the kind of person who could talk about the Amazon rainforest or the coral reefs in Fiji and make you feel like you'd been there yourself. But every time he got close to launching, his older brother would say things like, "It's a risky market, especially with the economy like this," or, "It would be safer to keep your stable job a few more years." Adrian never heard those words as discouragement. He heard them as wisdom from someone who cared. But each conversation left him carrying a little more weight. By the third year, he'd convinced himself the dream was impractical. By the fifth, he didn't talk about it at all. This is the subtle erosion of passion. It doesn't feel like sabotage, it feels like compromise. And compromise, when repeated too often, becomes surrender. For Sagittarius, this is a tragedy because your soul doesn't thrive in the safe middle. You are wired for the edge, for the leap, for the thrill of chasing something just beyond your current reach. To deny yourself that is to deny your nature. Astrologically, this erosion often shows up when Neptune makes challenging aspects to your personal planets. Neptune blurs lines. It makes you doubt what's real, what's imagined, what's possible. When coupled with the influence of people whose fears are louder than their faith, you can find yourself drifting, not toward your dreams but away from them without ever deciding to turn around. Picture this. You're out in the ocean, strong and sure, swimming toward a distant island you've dreamed about for years. From the shore, someone calls out, "The waves look rough. Maybe you should turn back." You hesitate. You tread water. And then you start swimming toward them, not because you've decided the island isn't worth it, but because the call to return felt louder in that moment than the call to keep going. And when you reach the shore, they smile and wrap you in a towel. You're safe. You're warm. But you're also no closer to the place you long to be. The subtlety of this erosion is what makes it so dangerous. If someone outright told you to give up, your Sagittarian fire would likely burn hotter in defiance. But when the doubt comes laced with love, it disarms you. You don't push back, you internalize. You tell yourself you'll try again later, that maybe they're right, that you can still be happy with something smaller. But Sagittarius, here's the thing, your smaller is someone else's impossible. Your vision is not meant to fit comfortably inside their comfort zone. It's meant to stretch past it, to inspire them to expand their own. You are the explorer, the torchbearer. If you let your torch dim to make them comfortable, you're not only betraying yourself, you're depriving them of the chance to see what's possible when a fire is allowed to burn at full strength. There's a question I want you to ask yourself. When was the last time I felt that full-bodied, unstoppable passion for something? If you can't remember, or if it feels like it's been buried under practicality for too long, then maybe it's time to consider whether that erosion has been happening. And if it has, you can reclaim it, but it starts with recognizing who has been holding the bucket of water, even if they've been holding it gently. Your passion is not reckless. It is your compass. Without it, you are just drifting, hoping the current takes you somewhere worth landing. With it, you are the captain of your own voyage, steering straight toward the extraordinary. And those who truly care for you, they will bring more wood for your fire, not less. Gate 3. The cost of keeping the peace. For Sagittarius, harmony often feels like home. You are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, generosity, and optimism, and your instinct is to preserve goodwill, to keep the air light and open, to avoid the heaviness of unnecessary conflict. But there is a hidden cost to this peacekeeping, one you rarely calculate in the moment: the quiet surrender of pieces of yourself. Start small. A friend makes a remark that undermines your dream, and instead of defending it, you laugh it off. A colleague takes credit for part of your work, and rather than calling it out, you tell yourself it's not worth the drama. A family member questions your choices, and instead of explaining your truth, you change the subject. Each of these moments feels minor, insignificant, but stacked together over months or years, they form a wall between who you truly are and who the world sees. And one day you wake up realizing that the person moving through life is a quieter, smaller version of yourself. Not because you've lost your voice, but because you've trained yourself not to use it. I once worked with a Sagittarius woman named Lena. She was magnetic, her ideas, her laughter, her sheer presence could fill a room. But in her marriage, she found herself constantly adjusting. Her husband wasn't a bad man. He just preferred things calm and predictable. When Lena would share her plans for big projects or spontaneous travel, he'd say things like, "Let's not rock the boat right now," or, "Do we really need to do that?" Lena, not wanting to argue, would agree to wait a little longer. She told herself she was being mature, that keeping the peace was more important than pushing for her own way. 10 years later, she realized she had been waiting for an entire decade. And the projects, the trips, the wild laughter that once defined her had all been shelved in the name of avoiding tension. This is the shadow side of peacekeeping. It can slowly rewrite your story without you noticing. Astrologically, this often emerges when Saturn transits your 7th house of partnerships or aspects your natal Venus. Saturn teaches responsibility, but in challenging placements, it can turn that responsibility into overcompromise. You tell yourself you're just being wise or strategic, but in truth, you're absorbing the discomfort so others don't have to. The danger for Sagittarius is that this suppression doesn't feel like suppression. It feels like love, like understanding, like maturity. You believe that letting small things slide will preserve relationships, but here's the truth. The relationships being preserved aren't always authentic. They're built on the version of you who is palatable, agreeable, and quiet, not the vibrant, untamed Sagittarius who lights up the sky when allowed to burn at full strength. Imagine your soul as a grand, colorful tapestry hanging in a gallery. Every time you stay silent to keep the peace, a small square of that tapestry is covered with a plain gray cloth. One cloth doesn't matter much. 2, 3, even 10 don't seem like a big deal. But over the years, the gallery visitors stop seeing the art for what it is. They only see the muted, covered version. And the most heartbreaking part? You start to forget what the original tapestry looked like yourself. There's also an emotional toll. When you silence your truth too often, resentment builds, not just toward the people you've accommodated, but toward yourself for allowing it. That resentment, left unspoken, becomes a slow-burning fire. It doesn't rage outward. It smolders inward, dimming your joy and leaving you feeling strangely disconnected from your own life. Sagittarius, keeping the peace is not the same as keeping your soul intact. True harmony can only exist when all voices, yours included, are heard and honored. If a relationship can only survive when you are less than you are, it's not peace you're preserving. It's an illusion. And illusions, no matter how comfortable they feel, always shatter in the end. The real challenge here is courage. It takes bravery to speak up, to risk a ripple in calm waters. But you were not born to live your life tiptoeing around the edges of your own truth. You were born to stand in the center of your own fire, knowing that the right people will not fear its heat. They will gather closer, not back away. So ask yourself this: whose peace am I protecting, and at what cost to my own? If the answer leaves you uneasy, it might be time to let a few ripples form. After all, still water can look serene, but it can also be stagnant. And Sagittarius, you are not meant to be stagnant. You are meant to flow, to leap, to blaze. Gate 4. When your light becomes an uncomfortable mirror. One of the hardest truths a Sagittarius can face is this: not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people, sometimes the ones you love most, will feel unsettled, even threatened by your expansion. And it's rarely because they dislike you. More often, it's because your progress forces them to confront the ways they've stopped moving in their own lives. When your light grows brighter, it doesn't just illuminate your own path. It casts light on the shadows around it. For some, that illumination is inspiring. It shows them what's possible. For others, it's unbearable because it reflects the dreams they've set aside, the risks they never took, the freedom they never claimed. They may not even realize what they're doing, but their instinct will be to dim your fire, not out of cruelty, but as a way to quiet the discomfort they feel inside themselves. This is not a new lesson for Sagittarius. You are a fire sign, ruled by Jupiter, destined to expand and explore. Your natural state is movement, curiosity, and growth. But when you start moving too far ahead, some will subtly tug at your sleeve, asking you to slow down. They might say you're changing too much, or you're not the same person anymore. They may suggest you be more realistic, or keep your feet on the ground. On the surface, these comments sound harmless, even protective. But underneath, they are gentle leashes meant to keep you from running too far from the version of you they are comfortable with. I once knew a Sagittarius man named Eros who had worked tirelessly to build his own business. For years, his closest friends encouraged him, until the business began to thrive beyond anyone's expectations. Suddenly, the jokes began. "Must be nice to have that kind of money now," they'd say, or "don't forget us little people." These words were wrapped in humor, but Eros could feel the shift. His success had stopped being a shared victory. It had become a mirror they didn't want to look into. They still cared for him, but they no longer clapped the same way they once did. Astrologically, this dynamic often surfaces when Uranus or Pluto interacts with your personal planets. Uranus pushes you toward radical authenticity, while Pluto forces transformation that others might resist. These transits can make your light burn hotter and sharper, beautiful to you, but blinding to those who have grown used to softer, safer flames. It can be painful to accept that not everyone can, or will walk with you to your next peak. You might try to slow down to stay closer to where they are, thinking that love demands you wait. But here's the truth. You can love someone deeply and still recognize that your paths are diverging. Holding yourself back so they feel more comfortable will not keep the connection alive. It will only make you resentful and dim the light they once loved in you. Imagine you are climbing a mountain. The air gets thinner, the view more expansive. But partway up, your companion stops and says they're too tired to go further. They ask you to stay with them at the halfway point. Out of loyalty, you agree. But as days pass, you watch the sunrise from behind the ridge instead of from the summit. You tell yourself it's good enough. But in your heart, you know you've traded the view you were meant to see for the comfort of staying together. Sagittarius, you must understand this. Your light is not an attack, and your success is not a judgment. If it triggers something in another person, that is their soul's invitation to grow, not your cue to shrink. The right people will not ask you to dim so they can feel brighter. They will stand in your glow, letting it remind them of their own capacity to shine. Your journey is not about dragging others to the top with you, nor is it about leaving them behind with bitterness. It is about continuing to rise while leaving the door open for them to join you if they choose. Some will, and the reunion will be sweet. Others won't, and you'll learn to bless them from afar. You were never meant to be a muted flame. You are a torchbearer, a seeker, a guide. Your fire is part of your divine design, and dimming it will never make the world warmer. It will only make it darker. The moment you stop apologizing for your brightness is the moment you step fully into your role as a Sagittarius, the one who lights the path forward, even if not everyone is ready to walk it. Conclusion: the unfiltered flame. Sagittarius, the truth is rarely loud. It moves quietly like water reshaping stone. And so do the forces that can dim your light. They don't always arrive in the form of enemies or open criticism. They often come wrapped in warmth, concern, and the familiar comfort of people you trust. But just because someone means well doesn't mean they know what is best for the fire you carry. This journey is not about cutting people out of your life in anger. It is about becoming exquisitely aware of who nourishes your flame, and who, even unintentionally, shields it from its full glow. You have spent too long adjusting yourself to fit the temperature of the room, forgetting that you were never meant to be room temperature. You were born to blaze, to stretch your warmth across horizons unseen, to spark possibilities not only for yourself but for those ready to awaken to their own light. Ask yourself this. After each conversation, after each shared moment, do you feel expanded or diminished? This question will become your compass. If the answer is diminished, it's not a call for confrontation but for calibration. You can love someone and still create the space you need to breathe, to grow, to move without apology. In astrology, Jupiter, your ruling planet, reminds you that true abundance comes from alignment, not appeasement. And alignment sometimes means walking faster than the people around you, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Uranus teaches that liberation is a choice, and that choice must be made over and over again. The world does not benefit from a Sagittarius who hides. Your ideas, your laughter, your restless curiosity, these are not excesses to be tamed. They are necessities for the world you are here to help shape. So turn up the heat. Remove the dimmers. Stand where your fire can be seen in its full glory, even if it makes some people squint. Because one day, someone will see your light and realize it's exactly what they needed to find their own way out of the dark. And in that moment, you'll understand why you could never afford to dim it in the first place.